The Staples Center in Los Angeles hummed with anticipation on the night of September 7, 2001. A warmth in the air that had nothing to do with the late summer temperature and everything to do with the 30,000 people packed into every available seat. This was Michael Jackson's 30th anniversary celebration, a concert event that had been sold out for months, with fans traveling from every continent to witness the king of pop perform in what many believed would be one of his final major stage appearances. The lights dimmed at exactly 8 o'clock, and the roar that rose from the crowd was so loud it registered on seismographs at the California Institute of Technology 15 miles away. Michael emerged from beneath the stage on a hydraulic platform, dressed in black and gold, his silhouette unmistakable even before the spotlights fully illuminated him. He had performed thousands of concerts, had stood before millions of people, but something about this night felt different to him, felt weighted with significance he could not quite name. In the front row, directly in Michael's line of sight, sat a small girl who could not have been more than 7 years old. Her name was Maya, and she wore a red dress that her grandmother had sewn specifically for this concert, had saved for 6 months to afford the tickets that placed them in the premium section. Maya's hands gripped the railing in front of her seat with such intensity that her knuckles had gone pale, her eyes wide and unblinking as she watched Michael move across the stage with the grace that had defined his entire career. The concert proceeded through hit after hit, the audience singing along to every word, dancing in the aisles despite security's half-hearted attempts to maintain order. Michael gave them everything they had come for. The spins, the moonwalk, the vocal runs that seemed to defy human capability, the pure joy that radiated from him when he was in his element, doing what he was born to do. 2 hours into the performance, during a brief moment when the band was setting up for the next song, Michael did something unexpected. He walked to the edge of the stage, his eyes scanning the front rows, and his gaze landed on Maya. She was crying, not from sadness but from overwhelming emotion, tears streaming down her face as she watched this man she had idolized her entire short life perform just feet away from where she stood. Michael knelt down at the edge of the stage, bringing himself to her eye level, and he gestured for her to come closer. Security guards moved to intercept, assuming this was a breach of protocol, but Michael waved them away with a gentle shake of his head. Maya looked up at her grandmother, who nodded with tears already forming in her own eyes, understanding that whatever was about to happen was important, was meant to be. The little girl approached the stage on trembling legs, her red dress swishing around her knees, and when she reached the barrier, Michael extended his hand to her, palm up, an invitation. "What's your name?" Michael asked, his voice soft but amplified through his headset microphone so the entire arena could hear. Maya's mouth opened but no sound came out. She tried again, swallowing hard, and finally managed to whisper, "Maya." Her voice was so quiet that even with the microphone, many people in the crowd could not hear it, but they leaned forward anyway, sensing that something significant was unfolding. Michael smiled, that luminous smile that had appeared on magazine covers around the world, and he said, "Maya, that's a beautiful name. Do you like to sing?" The question seemed to unlock something in the little girl. She nodded vigorously, her shyness momentarily overcome by excitement. "I sing all the time," she said, her voice stronger now. "I sing your songs. I know all the words." The crowd laughed, a warm sound full of affection for this brave child, who was speaking to Michael Jackson, as if they were alone in a room rather than on stage in front of 30,000 people. Michael's smile grew wider. "Would you like to sing with me?" he asked, and before Maya could answer, before she could process what was being offered, he reached down and lifted her onto the stage with an ease that made it look effortless despite the height difference. Maya stood on the stage, her small body dwarfed by the massive production around her. The lights, the screens, the band members watching from their positions. The crowd erupted in applause and cheers, supporting this unexpected moment, this deviation from the planned program. Michael walked to the microphone stand at center stage and adjusted it down to Maya's height. Then he stepped back and looked at his musical director in the wings. "Can we do something gentle?" he asked, and the musical director nodded, already shuffling through sheet music, trying to find something appropriate for a 7-year-old girl who had just been pulled from the audience. Michael turned back to Maya, who stood frozen at the microphone, her eyes huge, her breathing rapid, clearly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. He knelt beside her, bringing himself down to her level again, and he spoke to her in a voice so quiet the microphone did not pick it up, words meant only for her. Whatever he said made Maya's shoulders relax slightly, made her nod, made her take a deep breath and square herself to face the audience. The band began to play, a simple melody, something that everyone in the arena recognized, but that was uncomplicated enough for a child to follow. Michael stood next to Maya, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, and he began to sing the first verse himself, his voice filling the arena with that distinctive sound that had defined pop music for decades. He sang about dreams and hope and the possibility that lived in every young heart, and as he sang, he looked down at Maya, encouraging her, showing her through his own performance what was possible when you let go of fear and simply allowed the music to move through you. When the first verse ended, Michael stepped back from the microphone, leaving Maya alone at center stage, 30,000 pairs of eyes watching her, waiting to see what would happen. The little girl looked out at the sea of faces, at the lights that made it impossible to see individual people beyond the first few rows, and for a moment it seemed like she might not be able to do it, might be too overwhelmed to make a sound. The silence stretched out, 3 seconds, then 5, then longer, and some people in the audience began to whisper, wondering if the spontaneous moment was about to become an embarrassing failure. Then Maya opened her mouth and sang, and the single note that emerged from this 7-year-old child silenced every whisper, stopped every breath, froze every movement in the Staples Center. Her voice was pure in a way that trained voices rarely achieve, untouched by technique or artifice. Just raw emotion and natural talent pouring out in a sound that seemed too powerful to come from such a small body. She sang the next line of the song, her voice gaining strength with each word, and the melody that had been beautiful when Michael sang it became something transcendent in Maya's interpretation. She was not trying to imitate Michael, was not attempting to match his style or his vocal runs. She was simply singing the way she sang in her bedroom, in her grandmother's kitchen, in the shower when she thought no one was listening, with complete honesty and zero self-consciousness. The effect was devastating. In the third row, a woman began to sob, her hands covering her face as she was overcome by the purity of what she was hearing. The crying spread like a wave through the audience, first the people closest to the stage, then moving back row by row until thousands of people were weeping openly, tears streaming down their faces as they listened to this little girl sing. Michael stood behind Maya, his own eyes glistening with tears, his hand still resting on her shoulder in a gesture that was both supportive and protective. He had performed with the greatest singers of his generation, had shared stages with legends, but he would later say that he had never heard anything more beautiful than Maya's voice in that moment, untrained and imperfect but absolutely genuine. She sang the entire verse and chorus, never missing a note, never faltering, her confidence growing as she felt the audience's reaction, as she understood on some instinctual level that she was giving them something they needed, something they had not known they were missing until she provided it. When she reached the final note, she held it longer than seemed possible for a child her age, her small lungs somehow containing enough air to sustain the sound while the band played the closing bars beneath her. The note finally faded, and Maya looked up at Michael with an expression of pure joy mixed with disbelief at what she had just accomplished. Michael pulled her into a hug, lifting her off the ground, and the camera operators captured the moment. This global superstar embracing a little girl in a red dress, both of them crying, both of them transformed by what had just occurred. If this story moves you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. These untold moments from music history deserve to be remembered and shared with the world. The standing ovation that followed was not polite or obligatory. It was thunderous, primal. People on their feet screaming and applauding with an intensity usually reserved for the finale of a concert. But this was not the finale. This was just a spontaneous moment in the middle of the show, and yet it had become the moment that everyone would remember, that would define the entire evening. Security guards who were supposed to maintain professional detachment wiped tears from their eyes. Camera operators filming for the broadcast had to pause and compose themselves. Band members sat at their instruments with their heads bowed, some of them praying, some of them just processing the magnitude of what they had witnessed. Michael set Maya back down on the stage, and he knelt in front of her one more time. The audience gradually quieted, wanting to hear what he would say, what words could possibly be adequate to follow what had just happened. Michael's voice, when he spoke, was thick with emotion. "Maya, you have a gift," he said, the words carrying through the arena. "What you just did, what you just gave to all these people, that's not something that can be taught. That comes from inside, from your heart, from your soul. Don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something. Don't ever let anyone make you smaller than you are." He reached up and removed the fedora he was wearing, the iconic hat that had become one of his signature accessories, worth thousands of dollars and photographed on magazine covers around the world. He placed it on Maya's head, where it immediately slipped down over her eyes because it was far too large for her, and the audience laughed through their tears at the image of this tiny girl swimming in Michael Jackson's hat. Michael adjusted it, tilting it back so she could see, and then he did something else. He removed the single white glove from his left hand, the glove that had become perhaps the most recognizable piece of clothing in entertainment history, and he gave it to Maya. "Keep this," he told her. "When you're older and you're pursuing your dreams and it gets hard, because it will get hard, I want you to look at this glove and remember tonight. Remember that you stood on this stage and you made 30,000 people feel something real. Remember that your voice has power, that your talent matters, that you matter." Maya nodded, clutching the glove to her chest with both hands, unable to speak, unable to process the weight of what she was being given, both the physical objects and the message behind them. Michael helped Maya off the stage, lifting her down and passing her carefully to her grandmother, who was sobbing so hard she could barely stand. The elderly woman held her granddaughter tight, one hand on the back of Maya's head, and she looked up at Michael with an expression of gratitude, so profound it needed no words. Michael touched his hand to his heart and bowed slightly, acknowledging her, honoring her, recognizing that this moment was not just about Maya but about every child who had been told they were not good enough, every little girl who had been made to feel invisible. The concert continued, Michael performing the rest of his scheduled set, but the energy had changed. Something had shifted in that arena. Some wall between performer and audience had dissolved completely. People sang louder, danced harder, cried more freely, as if Maya's performance had given them permission to be fully present, fully emotional, fully alive in a way they had been holding back before. When the concert finally ended 2 hours later, when Michael took his final bow and disappeared beneath the stage on the same hydraulic platform that had delivered him at the beginning of the night, people did not want to leave. They stood in their seats talking about Maya, about her voice, about the moment when she had opened her mouth and changed everything. The footage of Maya's performance went viral before viral was a common term, copied and shared on early internet platforms, recorded from the television broadcast and passed from person to person. People who had not been at the concert watched the video and cried just as hard as those who had been present. Something about the purity of the moment, the spontaneity, the obvious genuine emotion from both Maya and Michael, resonated with millions of people around the world. Music executives contacted Maya's family, offering record deals, management contracts, promises of stardom. Maya's grandmother, a wise woman who had raised 6 children of her own before taking on the responsibility of her granddaughter, declined every offer. "Maya will sing because she loves to sing," she told the representatives who called her modest home in South Central Los Angeles, "not because someone wants to make money from her. When she's older, if she still wants to pursue music, she can make that choice herself. But right now, she's 7 years old, and she needs to be a child." This decision, this prioritization of Maya's well-being over potential profit, was reported in news articles and discussed on talk shows, with many people praising the grandmother's wisdom while others argued she was denying Maya an opportunity that might never come again. Michael himself weighed in on the controversy during an interview 2 weeks after the concert. "Maya's grandmother is protecting her," he said simply. "I know what it's like to be a child performer, to have your childhood taken away because adults see dollar signs instead of seeing you. If Maya's family wants her to have a normal life, to grow up without the pressures that come with fame, then I support that completely. Her talent will still be there when she's ready to use it." He paused, his eyes distant, clearly thinking about his own childhood, about the Jackson 5 and the endless rehearsals and performances that had defined his youth. "The greatest gift you can give a talented child is time," he continued. "Time to develop, time to learn, time to figure out who they are separate from their talent. Maya has that gift now, and I hope she uses it well." These words, coming from someone who had lived the alternative, carried enormous weight and effectively ended the public debate. Maya's grandmother was allowed to raise her in peace, away from the spotlight, with Michael's blessing serving as a protective shield against further industry pressure. Maya kept the fedora and the glove in a special box in her room, and her grandmother would later say that she looked at them every single day, sometimes for just a moment, sometimes sitting with them for hours, holding the glove carefully as if it might dissolve if she gripped too hard. The objects became talismans, physical proof that the night had been real, that she had actually stood on that stage and sung for Michael Jackson and 30,000 other people. When Maya faced difficulties at school, when other children teased her or teachers doubted her, she would come home and open that box, and the sight of the fedora and glove would remind her of what she was capable of what she had already achieved. Her grandmother noticed that after difficult days, Maya would sing more, as if the music was how she processed challenges, how she reasserted her sense of self in the face of external pressures. The voice that had stunned the Staples Center continued to develop, growing richer and more controlled as Maya matured. But it never lost that essential quality of honesty, that direct emotional connection that had made her performance with Michael so powerful. Years passed and Maya grew into a teenager, then a young woman. She sang in her church choir, performed at community events, won local talent competitions without ever pursuing professional opportunities. She attended regular schools, had normal friendships, experienced the typical struggles of adolescence without the added burden of public scrutiny. Her grandmother's decision to protect her childhood was vindicated by the confident, grounded young woman Maya became, someone who loved music but was not defined solely by it, who had interests and relationships and a life that existed independent of her talent. When Maya turned 18, she made her own decision about music. She applied to and was accepted at the Berkeley College of Music, one of the most prestigious institutions for musical education in the world. Her application included a letter about the night she sang with Michael Jackson, about what that experience had taught her about the power of authentic performance, about connecting with an audience through honesty rather than technique. The admissions committee later said that her letter was one of the most moving they had ever received, that it demonstrated a maturity and understanding of music's purpose that most students took years to develop. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more untold stories about the legends who shaped music history. Your support helps us continue sharing these incredible moments that deserve to be remembered. Michael followed Maya's progress from a distance, never interfering, never reaching out directly, but keeping track through mutual acquaintances and occasional news reports about her achievements. When he learned she had been accepted to Berkeley, he sent a gift, a full scholarship covering 4 years of tuition, room, and board, sent anonymously through his charitable foundation. Maya and her grandmother only learned who had provided the scholarship years later, after Michael's death, when the foundation's records were made public during estate proceedings. The revelation brought fresh tears, fresh gratitude, fresh understanding of how deeply Michael had been invested in Maya's well-being, how seriously he had taken his own advice about giving talented children time to develop. The scholarship was not about recognition or publicity. It was about ensuring that financial constraints would not prevent Maya from pursuing her dreams when she was finally ready to pursue them. It was Michael's way of continuing to support the little girl he had lifted onto that stage, of honoring the moment they had shared by helping her build on it in her own time, on her own terms. At Berkeley, Maya thrived. She studied jazz and classical music, learned music theory and composition, collaborated with students from around the world who brought different traditions and perspectives to their shared love of music. Her professors recognized her talent immediately, but were more impressed by her work ethic, her willingness to accept criticism, her genuine curiosity about every aspect of musical performance and production. She told the story of singing with Michael Jackson to fellow students, but she told it without bragging, focusing instead on what the experience had taught her about vulnerability and authenticity in performance. Some students did not believe her until she showed them the footage, still available on video sharing sites, showing a 7-year-old Maya in a red dress making an arena full of people cry. Watching that footage with her classmates, seeing their reactions to her younger self, Maya felt a complex mix of pride and responsibility. Pride in what she had accomplished, but also responsibility to honor that moment by continuing to develop, by becoming worthy of the faith Michael and her grandmother had placed in her. During her junior year at Berkeley, Maya was required to complete a senior thesis project, and she chose to focus on spontaneous performance and audience connection, using her experience with Michael as the foundation for broader research into moments when unplanned events became iconic. She interviewed other performers who had experienced similar spontaneous moments, studied the psychology of audience response, analyzed recordings to understand what made certain performances transcendent, while others remained merely competent. Her thesis advisor, a professor who had been performing professionally for 40 years, said Maya's work was some of the most insightful academic writing on performance he had encountered, that she had managed to articulate things that most performers understood instinctively but could never explain. The thesis was eventually published in a music education journal, introducing a new generation of students and teachers to the concepts Maya had developed, the ideas about authenticity and risk and the magical unpredictability of live performance that could never be fully planned or controlled. Maya graduated from Berkeley with honors and multiple job offers from recording studios, performance venues, and music education programs. She chose to return to Los Angeles, to the community where she had grown up, and she founded a music school for underprivileged children, kids who had talent but lacked resources, who faced the same barriers that might have stopped Maya if not for her grandmother's support and Michael's scholarship. The school was named Harmony House, and it offered free music lessons, instrument rentals, performance opportunities, and college preparation assistance to any child who wanted to participate. Maya taught classes herself, sharing not just technical knowledge but the philosophy she had developed about music as a tool for emotional expression and community connection. She told her students about the night at the Staples Center, not to impress them but to illustrate her belief that music's power came not from perfection but from honesty, from the willingness to be vulnerable in front of others. On the 10th anniversary of Michael Jackson's death, Maya organized a memorial concert at Harmony House, a celebration of his music and his legacy that focused specifically on his generosity toward young performers, his willingness to share stages and spotlights with people who were just beginning their journeys. The concert featured students from the school performing Michael's songs, each one introducing their selection with a story about what Michael's music had meant to them, how it had inspired them to pursue their own artistic dreams. Maya performed last, singing the same song she had sung with Michael 20 years earlier, her voice now trained and mature, but still carrying that essential quality of emotional honesty that had made her 7-year-old self so compelling. As she sang, she wore the fedora Michael had given her, now carefully preserved and only brought out for special occasions. The glove sat on a stand beside her, visible to the audience, a reminder of where she had come from and why she had chosen to dedicate her life to helping other young performers find their voices. The memorial concert was filmed and shared online, and it brought Maya's story back into public consciousness. News outlets ran features about the little girl who had sung with Michael Jackson and had grown into a woman dedicated to continuing his legacy of supporting young talent. Celebrities and music industry professionals who had known Michael reached out to Maya, offering support for Harmony House, donating instruments and equipment, volunteering to teach masterclasses. The school expanded, serving more students, offering more programs, becoming a model for similar institutions in other cities. Maya appeared on talk shows and podcasts, always steering the conversation back to the students, to the importance of arts education, to the transformative power of music when it was accessible to everyone regardless of economic background. She spoke about Michael not as a distant celebrity but as someone who had seen her potential and nurtured it, who had given her not just a moment on stage but a philosophy about what performance should be and what it could accomplish. 25 years after that night at the Staples Center, Maya's grandmother passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 87. The funeral was held at the same church where Maya had sung in the choir as a child, and it was attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by this woman's wisdom and generosity. Maya sang at the service, her voice filling the church with the same purity it had possessed on that stage so many years earlier, and when she finished, there was not a dry eye in the building. In her eulogy, Maya spoke about her grandmother's decision to protect her childhood, to prioritize her well-being over profit, to give her time to grow into herself before facing the pressures of the music industry. My grandmother understood something that many people forget, Maya said, her voice steady despite her grief. She understood that talent is not rare. What's rare is the environment that allows talent to develop healthily, that gives young people space to be children while they're discovering who they are. She gave me that space, and it made all the difference. After the funeral, Maya placed her grandmother's favorite photograph in the box with the fedora and glove, the three objects now unified as symbols of the night that changed her life and the woman who ensured that change remained positive rather than destructive. Harmony House continued to grow under Maya's direction, eventually expanding to multiple locations across Los Angeles and inspiring similar programs in other cities. Each location featured a photograph in the entrance hall. Maya at 7 years old on stage with Michael Jackson, both of them singing into the same microphone, both of them transformed by the moment they were sharing. Below the photograph was a quote from Maya. "Music is not about being perfect. It's about being present, being honest, being willing to share something real with people who need to feel something real." That's what Michael taught me that night, and that's what I hope to teach everyone who walks through these doors. Students at Harmony House learned this philosophy along with their scales and chord progressions, absorbing the idea that technical skill was important but emotional authenticity was essential, that the goal was not to become famous but to use music as a tool for connection, expression, and healing. The fedora and glove remained in Maya's possession, carefully preserved in a climate-controlled case in her office at Harmony House. She occasionally loaned them to museums for Michael Jackson exhibits, always with detailed provenance documentation explaining their significance, telling the story of the night they had been gifted. Museum curators reported that visitors often spent more time looking at these objects than at more flashy items like performance costumes or award statues, drawn to the story they represented, the spontaneous generosity that had defined the exchange. Children especially were captivated by the tale of a little girl who got to sing with her hero, who received these treasured items not because she was already famous, but because she was brave enough to be authentic in a moment of tremendous pressure. Teachers used the story in lessons about courage, about seizing opportunities, about the importance of mentors who see potential and nurture it rather than exploiting it. In her 60s, looking back on a life shaped by 3 minutes on a stage, Maya wrote a memoir titled One Note, focusing on that performance with Michael and everything that flowed from it. The book became a bestseller, resonating with readers who had their own stories of transformative moments, of times when someone in power had chosen to lift them up rather than ignore them. Maya's writing was clear and unsentimental, focusing on facts and feelings rather than melodrama, letting the inherent power of the story speak for itself. Critics praised the book for its honesty and its insights into child development, mentorship, and the music industry's treatment of young performers. Several universities adopted it as required reading in music education and child psychology programs, using Maya's experience as a case study in how to support talented children without exploiting them, how to balance opportunity with protection, how to honor a child's gift without making it their entire identity. The final chapter of the memoir described Maya's last conversation with Michael, a phone call that occurred 3 months before his death. Michael had called to congratulate her on Harmony House's expansion, to tell her how proud he was of what she had built, how perfectly she had understood and embodied the lesson he had tried to teach that night on stage. "You could have become a pop star," Michael told her. "You had the talent, the opportunity, the moment that could have launched you into that world. But you chose something better. You chose to use your gift to create opportunities for others. That's not just success. That's legacy. That's how you change the world." Maya had cried during that call, overwhelmed by hearing these words from the man who had started her on this path, who had seen something in a 7-year-old girl that she had not yet seen in herself. She told him about her students, about the kids who reminded her of herself, who had talent and passion but needed someone to believe in them. Michael listened, really listened, asking questions and offering advice based on his own experiences. The call lasted an hour, and when it ended, Maya felt a sense of completion, of circle closing, though she did not know then that she would never speak to Michael again. When Michael died 3 months later, Maya was devastated but not destroyed. She grieved publicly and privately, speaking at memorial services about his generosity, his vision, his genuine love for young performers, and his commitment to protecting them from the industry's darker aspects. She established a scholarship fund in his name through Harmony House, ensuring that his legacy of supporting young talent would continue in perpetuity. Every year, on the anniversary of that concert at the Staples Center, Maya held a special performance at Harmony House where students could share stories about their own mentors, about people who had seen their potential and helped them develop it. The event became a tradition, a ritual that honored not just Michael but the broader principle he represented, that those who have power and platform have a responsibility to lift others up, to create opportunities, to share rather than hoard the spotlight. The image that endured, the one that appeared in documentaries and articles and social media posts whenever people discussed Michael Jackson's impact beyond his music, was not of him performing to massive crowds or winning awards or breaking records. It was the photograph of him kneeling beside 7-year-old Maya on that stage, both of them crying, his fedora on her head, his glove in her hands, two people connected by a spontaneous moment of recognition and generosity that neither would ever forget. That image represented everything Michael believed about music and performance and the responsibility that came with extraordinary talent. It showed that greatness was not just about what you could do yourself but about what you could inspire in others, about recognizing potential and nurturing it without demanding anything in return. Maya kept a copy of that photograph on her desk at Harmony House, and she looked at it every day, remembering not just her 7-year-old self but the lesson that moment had taught her. That the most powerful thing you can give someone is not applause or awards but the belief that they matter, that their voice deserves to be heard, that they have something valuable to offer the world. That belief, passed from Michael to Maya and from Maya to thousands of students over the decades that followed, was the real legacy of that night at the Staples Center, the gift that kept giving long after the applause faded and the tears dried and the lights came back on.